Hello and welcome to QUT News.
Hello.
An 18-year-old man has been remanded in custody charged with the grievous bodily harm of a teenager. The man will face court later this week.
Friends and family were at the Redcliffe Magistrates Court to support Jake Ashley Law Cobbo. He's been charged over an incident at a Redcliffe McDonald's on Friday night, which has left 17-year-old Joshua Waite fighting for life. Law Cobbo wasn't in court and didn't apply for bail when his case was mentioned. His solicitor, Andrew Forrest, says he'll review CCTV footage from the McDonald's car park where the incident allegedly occurred. Joshua Waite suffered critical injuries when he was allegedly kicked in the head. Supporters of Law Cobbo had a message for the 17-year-old.
I hope the boy recovers well and I hope he's doing all right.
He remains in a critical condition and in an induced coma at Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital. Despite not appearing in court today, the 18-year-old will remain in the watch house to reappear again in court on Wednesday. Kate Lavrensic, QUT News.
A 27-year-old man has been arrested following the discovery of a woman's body in a Sydney home. 55-year-old Linda Connors was found covered with blood and wrapped in a blanket. Her younger son raised the alarm. Police stopped a vehicle on a nearby highway.
There was a crossbow taken out of the vehicle, but there are other items also being taken out of the vehicle.
It's believed the woman died on Mother's Day.
There's been another rowdy student protest over the federal budget, this time targeting a meeting in Sydney attended by the Treasurer. While some opinion polls show a majority support for the budget's tax increases, that hasn't translated into support for the coalition.
It's week 2 of the post-budget sales pitch, but not everyone's on board. Angry university students continue to protest the federal government's higher education cuts and plans to increase student fees. Despite an impressive turnout, they failed to interrupt Treasurer Scott Morrison's address. But their sentiments echo the loss of support for the government in today's news poll. It shows Labor in the lead with 53% to 47% after preferences. The government's primary vote is unchanged, while Labor's is up 1%. However, the Reachtel poll shows there has been strong support for the coalition's revenue-raising measures. 68% approve of the $6 billion bank tax, while 54% approve of the Medicare levy increase to fund the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Australians, I think, are generous. I think they have big hearts, and I have been very encouraged by their response.
The Prime Minister hopes these opinion polls will convince crossbenchers to pass the Medicare levy increase in full.
We want the senators to listen to the sentiment that's being reflected from the public and support all those measures.
Labor continues to push for low and middle income earners to be exempt.
Most people think this is a budget which is unfair because it's allowing millionaires to pay less and 10 million people to pay more.
Tamika Sito, QUT News.
Year 1 school children will now be required to undergo testing to better understand their grasp of numeracy and literacy. It's part of a federal funding condition under the Gonski 2.0 reforms.
The Education Minister, Simon Birmingham, joined a class of students at Windsor State School. He explained that a one-on-one soft test will happen at the beginning of the school year. It's designed to help teachers gauge a student's understanding and knowledge.
That ensures students are learning to read properly, that they're developing the skills to identify phonetic sounds, to make sure they can decode words and to understand basic numeracy.
The phonic testing system is based on the UK's model, which was initially recommended in 2005.
But in the UK they've seen a real lift over the years of its implementation now in terms of students developing those phonics skills.
Mr. Birmingham says it's nothing like a NAPLAN test and is designed to identify children who may need more help or assistance. Not everyone is on board with the government's reforms. The Queensland Teachers Union is saying that phonic testing is nothing new and teachers are already doing this at the beginning of each school year. So the plan doesn't have union support.
We're very concerned at the potential for this new test announced by Minister Birmingham to blow out of proportion in the way that NAPLAN has.
The Minister hasn't confirmed if the changes will be implemented next year. Laura English, QUT News.
They look after us when we're sick, But what happens when those who care for us are suffering themselves? An industry conference in Brisbane is encouraging doctors to speak up on mental health.
It's the elephant in the room, and it's hoped it'll inspire doctors not to suffer in silence.
Well, the elephant in the room is what people know but don't talk about, and mental health is one of those issues.
With 2,000 doctors at the conference, the Brisbane Convention Centre set the stage for an open discussion about mental well-being. Dr. Bridget Effany says it's a sensitive subject, but one we need to talk about.
We have high pressure jobs, we have high expectations. It's often a bunch of intelligent people who are ambitious.
She says these factors put doctors in a high-risk group, susceptible to substance abuse and suicide. According to Beyond Blue, doctors experience significantly higher rates of psychological distress compared to other working professionals. In a 12-month period, around 1/4 of doctors reported having thoughts of suicide. The case for upping awareness is stronger than ever after a respected Brisbane doctor recently took his life. In an email that went viral, Dr. Bryant's wife said she didn't want her husband's suicide to be a secret, and that if more people talked about what leads to suicide, then there might be fewer deaths. It's hoped talking about the circumstances of his death will serve as a catalyst.
And maybe from the tragedy, some good can come.
She lists safe hours, adequate debriefing and support from within departments as part of the solution. Lily Nothling, QUT News.
Brisbane woke to a thick blanket of fog Monday. It caused chaos for commuters, with vision restricted to about 50 metres in some suburbs.
Only CBD building tops managed to keep their heads above the thick shroud. The Bureau of Meteorology said the fog spread across southeast Queensland from the coast to Toowoomba. It's not a common sight, rolling in only a handful of times each year, but it caused delays for those travelling to work or flying in or out of Brisbane Airport. Inbound flights were diverted to the Gold Coast, or in one case to Sydney.
Well, this was the first fog event we've had in 2017, and the fog actually stayed at Brisbane Airport for around about 3 hours. So about 150 flights were impacted in some way.
Authorities urge passengers to contact their airlines, check websites and the Brisbane Airport app for the latest updates.
So we were due to depart at 6 and we departed at 6:30. And the weather was bad, so we had to land in the Gold Coast, then we fly again to Brisbane.
One CityCat service was cancelled, but 2 hours after sunrise, the fog lifted to reveal a clear autumn day. Although this morning's flight caused delays for up to 3 hours for some commuters, by mid-afternoon, most flights were back on schedule. The Bureau isn't expecting similar conditions tomorrow. Zarisha Bradley, QUT News.
It's an annual event which now attracts competition from around the country. Paddlers enjoyed Mother's Day out on the water, the annual Macleay Island Classic.
Canoeists young and old gathered to compete in the 15-kilometre race around Macleay Island. 50 competitors took part in the event, which started 9 years ago. Races travelled from Coffs Harbour, Noosaville, the Gold Coast and Brisbane. With barely a breath of wind and overcast skies, conditions looked promising for the paddle around the island.
I think this is the best year it's been as far as the wind goes. But it's just a real good sort of safe race and nice, really good scenery.
Avid canoeist, 82-year-old Digby Huffin was amongst those who crossed the finish line.
Yeah, good work.
Started in about 1980. So I've got a few years behind me.
Having undergone a double hip replacement and a shoulder operation since the event's inception, Mr. Huffin has only missed one. Tegan Fraser was the first woman across the line.
We're in Victoria visiting friends and family for the weekend and thought we would definitely have to get back for this race. So we caught the early flight out, got back about 8 o'clock, drove straight out here, paddled across.
The men's second place winner says it was a great way to spend Mother's Day.
Just good fun, a great event on Mother's Day today and a good thing for everybody to do.
Both winners say they'll be back next year. Charlotte Tully, QUT News.
Still to come, a global cyber attack which has already affected businesses in 150 countries.
And the latest injury woes causing headaches for the selectors of the Origin opener.
Continuing QUT News. Australia appears to have avoided the worst of the global cyber attack. More than 100,000 organisations in 150 countries were hit in the apparent extortion plot.
Security experts fear the virus dubbed WannaCry could wreak a new round of havoc when businesses reopen and employees log on.
We're in the face of an escalating threat. The numbers are going up. I'm worried about how the numbers will continue to grow when people go to work and turn the machines on Monday morning.
Finance ministers and central bank leaders from the G7 met in the Italian city of Bari to join forces and commit to redoubling their efforts to make cyberspace more secure. Cyber experts believe the malware spread on Friday from Britain's National Health Service. It then affected other networks in countries including Germany, Spain, and Indonesia. Britain's health system was disrupted after the global ransomware attack locked users out of their computers and demanded money to get their files back. All outpatient appointments at least 5 hospitals were cancelled.
Oh, it's definitely frustrating. I've got to be away from the family over the weekend, and I've got to stay in here, and it is a bit frustrating.
The British government was pleased with the response to the attack, although it's still unclear who's responsible.
We can't comment on that at the moment, but the National Crime Agency is working with the National Cyber Security Centre to find out who did.
Most British hospitals were back to normal by Sunday. Marissa Coolawine, QUT News.
France has welcomed its youngest president since Napoleon with full pomp and ceremony. 39-year-old Emmanuel Macron was greeted by crowds of supporters in Paris before making his first official address as president.
Young and in charge, the newly elected French president and his wife greeted crowds of supporters. Emmanuel Macron has been sworn in as 8th president of France at a ceremony in the Elysee Palace. Beforehand, Mr. Macron met outgoing President Francois Hollande in a private meeting where the country's nuclear codes were handed over. Security was tight across Paris, with hundreds of extra police on patrol. France has been under a state of emergency since terror attacks in 2015. A large section of the city centre was closed to traffic. The former investment banker is new to the political sphere, having only formed his centrist movement a year ago. He's vowed to shake up the French political system and to address the country's economic concerns. Macron says the challenge over the next 5 years will be to prevent the country from unravelling. All eyes will be on the young leader as he cements France's commitment to the EU. Christopher Anderson, QUT News.
North Korea has sent a warning to Washington. Your mainland is within striking range of our missiles. The North fired a ballistic missile that landed in the sea near Russia.
South Korea says it won't accept the North's provocations. They condemned Pyongyang's latest missile test, made only days after the election of a new administration. North Korea fired a ballistic missile from a region near its west coast on Sunday. The Japanese defense minister lodged a strong protest, calling the missile a threat to Japan. But in Tokyo, residents were less concerned. Many were skeptical that Pyongyang would attack Tokyo, but say it's worrying the test was conducted just days after South Korea's Moon Jae-in took office. The US says it would continue to pressure North Korea. China also is calling for restraint. The state news agencies reported the test was aimed at verifying the technological specifications of the newly developed ballistic rocket. North Korea is believed to be developing a missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead and reaching the US mainland. Andy Leung, QUT News.
3 people died and 10 more were injured when a train derailed in northern Greece. It was carrying 70 passengers and 5 crew when it crashed into the ground floor of a house. The train was on its way from Athens to Thessaloniki when it derailed. Locals helped passengers before emergency crews arrived. Thousands have gathered in Moscow to protest government housing plans. New laws would see millions of citizens forced to leave their homes.
Chanting "Hands off Moscow" and "Shame," thousands of protesters took to the streets, rallying against a bill to demolish Soviet-era apartment blocks. Under the proposal, thousands of low-rise buildings will be torn down to make way for new developments. The government says the apartments are outdated, but many are unconvinced. Protesters held signs reading, "We don't need renovation," and "Government out." This woman says her house is on the list to be demolished. She doesn't understand why, because it's in good condition. The proposal has also raised concerns about human rights. This protester says the relocation is illegal and inhuman. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny joined protesters before being escorted away by police. The buildings to be torn down were built in the 1950s to tackle overcrowding. Then leader Nikita Khrushchev said the apartments would be lived in for no more than 50 years. Most are still occupied. Tamika Sito, QUT News.
Eurovision winner Salvador Sobral has returned home to Lisbon a national hero. It was a landslide victory and the first win for Portugal since it began competing in 1964.
Sobral won performing a romantic jazz ballad written by his sister, stealing the hearts of millions who watched around the world. Virtually unknown before the contest, Sobral was welcomed home by jubilant fans singing his winning song. Escorted through crowds by police, fans tried to catch a glimpse of the newest Portuguese hero. Greeted with chants and cheers, Salvatore couldn't hide his grin during a press conference following his win. He even admitted he wasn't a fan of Eurovision in the past. Sobral says he hopes the win will be a boost for tourism in Portugal when it hosts the event next year. Phoebe Powell, QUT News.
A British D-Day veteran has become the world's oldest skydiver. Verdon Hayes jumped from 5,000 metres from a plane over Devon at the ripe old age of 101 and 38 days. His son, grandson and great-grandchildren joined Verdon in the record jump.
I'm absolutely over the moon. It's beautiful.
Money raised from his jump will help support the British Armed Forces community.
The injury toll ahead of Origin 1 has risen. Potential star players for both the Blues and Maroons have hit roadblocks.
Parramatta star player Corey Norman was a likely bolter for Queensland. Now he could be out for at least a month with a knee injury, following the 48-10 loss to the Roosters. For the Eels coach, it was a double dose of bad news.
I don't know, maybe 4 weeks, but there was a bigger blow today and it wasn't Corey Norman.
Manly star Tom Trbojevic has sustained injuries to his knee and ankle. The Broncos won that encounter 24-14. Tom's been ruled out for 6 to 8 weeks, meaning he won't be ready for an Origin debut for the Blues before Origin 3. State of Origin kicks off at Suncorp Stadium on May the 31st. Phoebe Powell, QUT News.
Defending world champion Tyler Wright has delivered a huge performance to take out the Yellow Leaders rash at the Rio Pro. She claimed victory over Frenchwoman Johanne Defay in the final. It's Wright's first win of the 2017 season. She now shares the lead in the women's rankings with fellow Aussie Steph Gilmore.
Thank you so much, Sakurima, for having us here. You guys, this crowd is amazing and we've had such fun waves, so thank you very much.
Tyler's brother Owen, Mick Fanning and Adrian Buchan are all through to the quarters. Elisabeth Moss has all the weather details next.
And why some mums have to celebrate Mother's Day half a world away from their children.
Hello, time to take a look at the weather. If you were up early in Brisbane, you probably noticed the thick cloud of fog blanketing the city. It was caused by a low pressure system travelling along the Tasman Sea, combined with a high moving across the southeast. Some scattered fog around southeast centres too. The Gold and Sunshine Coast reached tops in the mid-20s. Looking across the nation Tuesday, a top of 22 in Sydney, chilly mornings in Canberra and Hobart, mostly sunny in Melbourne and clearing showers in Perth. Back to Queensland, Cairns and Townsville should reach 29 degrees. 26 in Mackay and Longreach expect a range of 11 to 30 degrees. On Moreton Bay, expect light northeasterly winds by the middle of the day, with seas below half a metre. The sun will set at 5 minutes past 5. A sunny Tuesday on both coasts, 26 for the sunny coast and 25 on the Goldie. Looking at the next few days in Brisbane, sunny on Tuesday, a slight chance of showers around the Bayside Wednesday and partly cloudy on Thursday. That's the weather for now. Back to you, Lily.
Thanks, Elizabeth. While our mums celebrated their special day Sunday, for others, it's Monday. But it's bittersweet. Why? Their children are in Australia, while the mums are soldiers in a war zone.
They're 13,000 kilometres away from home. Military mums celebrate their special day with no breakfast in bed or hugs from their beloveds.
I think the fact that we were kept busy and kept our mind on the job made it a little bit easier.
Major Monday and Corporal Rooney are at an Australian base outside Baghdad. Sticking together helps them get by.
Yeah, all being in the same boat, we're okay.
What they miss the most might surprise.
The normality, I think. The getting up and getting the kids ready for school and going about your daily business.
And their wish for other mums?
I hope they enjoy their day and enjoy their normal routine.
We asked both military mums to send a message for their children.
I'm looking forward to celebrating with you when I get home and opening up all my presents.
I miss you, kiddo. I will see you soon. I hope you're being good for your grandfather.
Liana Walker, QUT News.
That brings you up to date with QUT News. Goodbye for now.
We close with new season designs from Australian Fashion Week. Goodbye.